We're going to talk about all this with founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action, and host of the podcast Macro and Cheese, that's Steve Grumbine. Steve is also a leading activist and evangelist for modern monetary theory. Good to have you back, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for doing this. And let's start with Florida. The news from the Florida Supreme Court on Monday seems to have led Democrats to believe that they can win the state in November thanks to what they expect to be increased turnout because of the abortion issue. The polls don't actually show that. And so I'm wondering if this is a Democratic head fake to make Republicans waste money defending Florida.
Especially since they're going to have a ballot initiative on the changing the state constitution. You know what I mean? So It doesn't actually matter who it matters in other ways, but yeah.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Or do Democrats really believe they have a chance to win Florida? What do you think?
If you want to know what I really think, I'll tell you what I really think. What I really think is the quest to manufacture consent is being played out before our eyes as we are beginning to see the screws turning rightward even further. Even when you look at the things the Democrats are pushing forward, they are not the kind of full-throated left-wing stuff that they're accused of being. Mm-hmm. So as we're watching this stuff, let's be fair. The repeal of Roe v. Wade through judicial process was a direct failure of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. So the idea that they can somehow or another win on that issue in Florida, it requires a whole different kind of, I don't even know what, different kind of version of reality. So to me, at the end of the day, I believe it's all about manufacturing consent for the larger national conversations. And I believe that all of this stuff is a lot of hand-wringing to give credence, to give kind of validity to a process meant simply to advance a narrative that's beyond the duopoly, that it's extended beyond the electoral process.
Guys, we have to reinstate sanctions on Venezuela to appease Venezuelans in Florida.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly.
Democrats also appear to be increasingly worried about RFK Jr. His poll numbers are now steady at 13.5%. That's according to 538 today. 13.5% is very significant. The DNC and MoveOn.org are working hard and spending a lot of money to derail this campaign. And they're doing a couple of dirty tricks. But Republicans seem to be a little bit worried, too, with Donald Trump earlier this week calling RFK a radical leftist, which, of course, he's not. The Democratic position is that RFK is taking what would otherwise be Biden votes. Do you agree with that? Or, I'm wondering if people who are supporters of RFK otherwise wouldn't vote.
Well, you obviously have a third party / anti-establishment kind of contingent, but that contingent has been there for Jill Stein. She's never gotten more than like 1%, et cetera.
Right.
I think what you've got here really is, what has Biden been doing? What is he actively out there saying? That they're out there seeking to win over the Nikki Haley Republicans. Yeah. Yes. They're not even worried about the left. So who supports RFK Jr.? I assure you it's not the left.
No, it's not.
It is that right-wing libertarian that Millier is doing great things by pegging the pegging the currency to the dollar. The idiot that is, this is a guy who's a Zionist, who's an unapologetic genocidal maniac. So he's really competing with Biden in that right-wing space. The left doesn't want either Biden or RFK Jr. And so this is all about the James Baker crew. This is all about that the old coalition that they used to talk, the Bush team, the Reagan, the old Reagan bots, bringing them all back together, so to speak. And, again, I believe a lot of this is manufactured consent. I believe that we are in a significant rightward push. And if you look, I know this is going to seem unrelated, but I am a dialectical person that assesses things with multiple threads. I'm looking at that third body problem, and I'm looking at the new movie Civil War, and I'm seeing a lot of converging narratives that are trying to create a play off of the January 6th quote unquote insurrection and everything else. So what you're dealing with is, once again, the clamping down of society, using these events and using these images to bring about fear that once again brings about a reaction to manufacture consent. But Biden and RFK Jr., the only thing that they have, in my opinion, that is remotely different is RFK Jr.'s highly unscientific vaccine perspective and his overarching idea about Bitcoin. Beyond that, they're birds of a feather.
Yeah.
And, you know, and let me just say one more thing, too. First of all, I know that this is probably an unpopular opinion with some, but I absolutely despise RFK Jr. for a host of reasons that almost parallel with why I despise Biden. And that is because RFK Jr. is using austerity politics that play well in the libertarian space.
Right.
The most corrosive, ridiculously illiterate and wrong-minded beliefs about economics. And as a result of that, he's taking the young people, those young kids, the young Hispanics that are disenchanted with the world and disenchanted with what's going on. And I understand because I'm right there with them. The problem is the solution they're putting forward is bleeding the patient. We're talking about putting leeches on the patient, that kind of backward stuff. And if you go back to that third body problem that I was telling you about at the beginning, you look at the very beginning of that series. If you haven't seen it, I recommend going out there and getting your heart aflutter and watch it. And it's literally the most anti-intellectual thing in power. Like they're warning you, by the way, folks, you know, if this happens, you'll be run by a bunch of morons, a bunch of people that are ignoramuses that will literally draw. And you know what? RFK Jr. represents that. He represents that kind of, I don't understand economics, but let me stand up here and talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's a perversion that a guy like myself, who is an economic activist, has major problems because he's talking about setting us back. And I'm not talking about like, I believe we can elect our way out of this. I'm talking about the mental space he's occupying, taking up people's brain power to think through problems. He has warped brains all over. And so is Joe, because look at the idiots that are supporting him as if, hey, genocide's not really happening in Gaza. It's a tough call. It's a tough decision.
Yeah, right. Right. Steve, I'm not sure what to make of Donald Trump's threat to arrest Democrats who were on the impeachment and the January 6th committees. On the one hand, the Washington Post reported this like with their hair on fire. And they also said, well, he said that in the beginning, he's going to be a dictator. Well, I watched that and it was a joke. He was joking. So, of course, arresting your political opponents is fabulously illegal and authoritarian. If he actually does something like this, it could lead to something terrible. But what are we looking at here? Was he joking? Was he being provocative or bombastic, or what should we make of this?
Donald Trump has been bombastic from Jump Street. Okay, this is his I'm not woke. Let me just say what I'm thinking. Let me talk plain talk to you folks out there kind of thing. Okay, and this plays well for that anti-intellectual group that just, oh my God, you mean to tell me that Black people have been oppressed and you're using that as woke? No, it must be about transgender. Oh no, it must be about. And so they've perverted very, very meaningful things to kind of create this caricature, okay? And what have the Democrats done? The Democrats have said, hey, that caricature is an easy way to stir up normies. Let us get them fapped up and excited about this, terrified that they're going to lose their rights and stuff. When in reality, short of Donald Trump's bad tweets, this guy has largely been a standard Republican.
Yeah.
And I don't like him. I don't like any of them. I don't like the ruling class. I am a absolute socialist that sees this stuff through the eyes of class, and I see what they're doing as completely not in my class, not for our working class. None. Just because you get to call a Black person the N-word in Donald Trump's world, or just because you get to call a homosexual an F in this world, or you get to mock the trans person, you get whatever. That doesn't constitute working class values. That constitutes a repudiation of the liberal elite weaponizing identity politics. And as a result of that, this entire thing is all about ginning up support, ginning up this kind of, dare I say, Civil War-minded behavior to bring about a kind of tension and a kind of precarity that keeps people willing to kind of toe a line, kind of out of fear, live a certain way. And I think that this is all playing into that. Every time I talk to a Democrat and I ask them about Genocide Joe, they always say, but Trump.
Right,
and
exactly.
I say, but Trump is not killing 15,000 children in Gaza. Now, that doesn't mean Trump won't carry on the fight, because this is not, you have to recognize there is a hidden class, an ownership class of the world, people that are far beyond the monetary system, that have always had money and generational money, and they probably have inbred too.
Yeah.
And these people literally pull the strings. So it doesn't matter if Trump's in office or if it's Biden in office. The deal is to keep the people at each other's throats to absolutely ensure that they never come together as a real legitimate force and take back their own power. And that's kind of my critique of electoral politics right now, is it's a show to manage people from ever realizing their true power and staving off an actual, a real honest to goodness revolution, which they try to paint that insurrection as this thing. And it's all meant to allow for laws that will clamp down on us all as they institute austerity, as they reduce budgets, as they cut spending. I mean, I'm talking to people now that think that, quote unquote, a rise in crime is just because people have gotten bad. Reality, let me tell you, the Biden team is telling everybody what a great, wonderful economy we have, and they're showing you all these aggregates. But when they look at the stratification and look at how there's huge layoffs going on right now in the tech industry, people are without jobs again. We're starting to see the results of some of the negative externalities that come from this kind of high-minded, business-first approach. And you know what? It's going to be really painful, and people are going to be scared because they're not going to know what to do.
You are absolutely right.
And so,
and these two parties aren't going to save us.
Hell no. Let me go a step further, and I know this will rub the third-party friends of mine the wrong way. I don't believe a 700th party will work in this system. Yeah. I believe this system is literally a placebo to get us all feeling like we have agency, to get us feeling like we have a stake in this thing, when in reality, look at how Biden has literally continued to provide weapons to Israel in spite of outrageous anti-Biden sentiment, even from his own party, and he still does it. How could somebody in an election year do that if it wasn't part of a mission higher than them? Yes. If it wasn't something that goes beyond an electoral, because you clearly see we don't have a democracy. And if you don't, allow me to put some toothpicks in your eyes to open them up to see it.
Seriously.
This is outrageous what's going on. So do I think that we can elect our way out of this? No. Do I think we can even fundamentally influence it? No. Because what'll happen is they'll shift the goalposts ever so slightly.
Right.
You'll get excited over a 1 degree change when there's another 359 degrees of that circle. And you're literally going to get so excited about that 1 degree of change that you'll go to the ends of the earth to defend and support whatever that is, while simultaneously sucking on a placebo that gets you absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
And now, am I right? I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt I'm right. Does that mean I'm right? No, it doesn't. But I believe that I am right. And I believe that everything that I'm watching and everything that I see tells me that you can vote all day long. You can vote twice on Sundays. Yeah. And nothing is going to fundamentally change. Yep. And I believe that from actually, I think it's getting worse. And I'm not sure the exact reasons why they're allowing it to get worse, but there's definitely a tightening down, a clamping down. I mean, the interest rate hikes as a result of giving some money away to people during the pandemic. Well, they had to get the ownership class a break on that. So what they do, they raised interest rates to give them a fat old check through their interest income channel as payola for allowing them to survive during the crisis. But now that it's over, now we're going to start turning the screws on. Now we're going to start reducing the deficit. Now we're going to start reducing spending. What's going to happen? You're going to see crime rise, and you're going to see people hating each other and pointing at each other and see. And this is going to give fuel. And Donald Trump and the others will be able to go up there on stage and say, I'm here to protect you from all those evil people out there that are going to break in your home and steal your food. Not, hey, let me go ahead and feed those people so they don't break in your home.
Yeah.
It's, I'm going to protect you from those evil ne'er-do-good folks over there. If we don't wake up and rise up and realize this is real, we're going to end up pretending like Biden and Trump and RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson really are going to do what we ask them to do. I mean, they may in their mind think so, but I'm telling you right now, the evidence says, I mean, there was a Princeton study that showed no matter how much we think we're impacting policy, nothing we say or do impacts policy.
Yeah, that's true.
It's ridiculous. So what do you make of that? John, to me, and Michelle, I mean, to me, what I'm hearing and seeing is an absolute clarion call for us to rise up, to organize, to fight back, and to stop looking at this electoral system as a real meaningful pathway to progress. But instead, it's a placebo, and we need to build outside of that and let this damn system crumble on its own merits. That's my take.
Right. Well, I want to ask you also about Nebraska. Trump went to Nebraska a couple of days ago and met with the governor of Nebraska, and they tried to force a measure through the Nebraska legislature, which interestingly enough is unicameral. There's just one body called the legislature. It doesn't have a House and a Senate. It's the only state in America that has just one legislative body. But they've got this odd electoral law that is not winner take all. The idea is that if Biden is able to win Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and he loses the other 4 battleground states, but hangs on to that one district that constitutes Omaha, he'll win the Electoral College 270 to 268. That's what Trump is supposedly afraid of. What are your thoughts on this? The Nebraska legislature turned him down. They have a very short window for legislation. They're going out of session soon. They just said, no, we're not going to do it. And so the electoral law is not going to change. But is Nebraska really that important? Is this race really that close?
Well, let me ask you, when the world is falling apart around you and you're fearing everything and you're looking around and you're seeing conspiracies and everything, because at this point in time, nothing is what it seems. Everything that we think is right is wrong and upside down.
And then this is just a distraction.
When you insert something like this into the national conversation, there's going to be somebody that does a search later on and say, no, man, you don't understand. Nebraska, when you say this is all a plan, and it's going to build up more. It's intentional. It is. I wouldn't call it a distraction. I'd say it's part of the overall messaging that allows us to stay disenfranchised and also without options. I mean, like literally part of the plan to keep us in precarity. That's my belief, and I can't codify that. I can't qualify that. I can just say that evidence across the board says that these are real things. What I'm saying.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's my take. I hope it stands. I mean, I don't want to be right. You know what I mean? I would rather be wrong.
Sure.
I wish everything I'm saying was just complete and utter nonsense, but I don't believe that. I believe in the pit of my soul that what I'm telling you is true.
Steve, I wanted to finally raise the Mayorkas impeachment. It looks like the Mayorkas impeachment trial is going to go straight down the tubes in the Senate next Wednesday, with Republicans saying that Mayorkas hadn't committed any crimes and that prosecuting him would be a bad look for Republicans. We said that all along. House Republicans had policy differences with Joe Biden. They took it out on Mayorkas and they impeached him. Do you see this as a political issue come November, or is this just too much inside baseball and both the Democrats and the Republicans just want it to go away?
You know, this is like when you have a little tiny group of people that care about this thing And everybody else on the outside is like going, what? Who? My what? Mayorkas? I mean, this is a big nothing burger, but it's a something burger in circles where this stuff matters.
Yeah.
I don't see this having any impact on the elections whatsoever, except for possibly somebody, the rotating villain come out and remind everybody about Mayorkas. And maybe it does something for some small group of people, but I can't see a use case where that's true.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Steve Grumbine. Steve is the founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. He's also host of the podcast Macro and Cheese and a leading activist for modern monetary theory.
You're listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.